Right, hello, welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to be covering this stuff, insulation, and how I'm going to be going into my floor. So what I have done, if you've seen any of my previous videos, I've installed 6x2 floor joists. So these floor joists all across the ground floor level. So typically in your standard British house they'll have 4x2 joists and lots of pier walls in houses built around this age. So this house originally had 4x2 joists, but they were all woodworm rotted. So obviously I had to replace them. So 6x2 C24 timber, which is the grading of the timber, CLS, Canadian, not Colombian, Canadian lumber standard. Anyway, and I made these battens out of offcuts, which I'll go into more detail in a minute. But essentially these battens sit along the bottom, and then I have my insulation sit on top. So build up works exactly like if I were to place it on edge, so you can see the angle, exactly like that. So these battens are fixed in, and then the insulation becomes flush with the, to fix these onto the joists I'm using 18 gauge brad nails. I'm firing with an 18 gauge brad nailer. Just this Milwaukee one. It's the best one I've come across. Again, I've not used any others, so it's also the worst I've come across by that same regard. Anyway, I fire those pins in, 4 battens or so, which I'll go into more detail in a minute, across the bottoms of these timbers. I cut the insulation and I place the insulation down, and then expanding foam around the top. I'll show you that, and how I insulated this old 100-year-old bungalow, 90-year-old bungalow, up to modern standards. But I will caveat it with, you will see me wearing a different outfit now, and I look about 2 weeks older. It's because the audio quality was not good enough, so I had to go back and film the intro again. But enjoy the video. Sorry if I repeat myself in any sections. That's because I've re-recorded this bit for your benefit. Right, enjoy.
Again, it will be this way round. Sorry if that made anyone dizzy. When it's paired with the insulation, you also put a foil tape across the gap. You fill with expanding foam. This stuff, easiest to apply with the gun, and then just make sure you've got some of the cleaner as well. Otherwise your gun will clog up and you'll waste all your money. The insulation I've already cut to size. It's all the same size, it's just not stacked up neatly. And I've done that with my jigsaw. So you don't see these ones too often in the UK. It's a barrel grip jigsaw as opposed to the D handle one. The D handle one usually has a handle that comes out here. But the barrel grip primarily used to undercut like this. I believe that's the term. So you're actually cutting underneath the surface and then you're following the blade. But you can use it the other way as well, which is what I'm doing. And I'll show you some footage of that as well. So you get people using hand saws. I don't think that's the best way. You get way more residual dust. Table saws, fine for the smaller stuff. Again, circular saws, fine for the smaller stuff. But you'll see the tiny amount of dust that you get. And this stuff you don't want in your lungs. It's hideous. So a 0 out of 10, recommend that. But it's great for insulating. So whether you're doing a grow room and you don't want the police to be able to thermally image your house, or you're just trying to insulate your house to the building regs or keep your house warm in the winter, it's great. But if you do decide to cut it with the jigsaw, which I do recommend, it's the best way I've come across cutting it, unless you're willing to spend £600 or £700 on the specified Festool tool. But I imagine that's if you do it day in, day out, and it's basically a larger blade than this, like a much wider blade and also longer, and you can cut complex angles and such. But again, this is ample. I mean, it cuts through it a little bit slower than probably a handsaw, but way less messy, much more accurate. Like if we look down the line there, you can see how square these cuts are. That's the machine. So that yellow side is the machine edge. But look how square those are. Again, this is a variable speed barrel grip jigsaw. I just have it set to 7, which is the fastest setting. And again, this blade's lasted forever. I gave a couple out to a few friends doing DIY projects who needed to insulate, and I've had no complaints. So it's what I'd recommend to use, and I'll give you a rundown of everything else as well as I'm fitting it. But yeah, chalk line comes in handy for marking across these, and also I've done my noggin spacing, other than this small section, at the perfect length of the Celotex, so they just slot in. They take a bit of convincing with the convincer, which I just need to find, which is a rubber mallet, and I just smack a bit of wood into them so you don't dent them.
Comes to cutting on the table saw, obviously, as someone who's cut his finger quite badly in the past, super careful, so always using the push stick, and I'm taking them all down to that 25mm measurement. Full wheelbarrow's load here, so just going across, cutting them all. Creates loads of sawdust, hence why I'm doing it outside, and I have a little dust mask on, but handy to have the blower as well, because that's great, just getting rid of all that dust across my front garden. Lovely. But yeah, just doing as many of these as I can from the scraps of wood, and then going around the house, fixing them in with those 18 gauge brads. So just lining them up with the bottom of those joists, as it's all measured to take into account the thickness of the joist, plus the the insulation, plus the batten equals the thickness of the joist. So that insulation is just flush with the top, and then that allows me to go around the gaps, expanding foam, chip off the expanding foam when it dries, and get that foil tape across, so it's like one big insulated envelope underneath your feet. So it's really, really effective what you're doing essentially. It's just, next bit is just cutting them all. So as you can see, I'm going across with that chalk line, marking it once, and then just cutting the width. So I don't need to take anything off the length as such of each one of these pieces of insulation, mainly because I've set my joists out at the size of these sheets of insulation, so 120 centimeters or 1200 millimeters. So it's just to cut off the width. The only annoying bit is you get these little offcuts at the end. It's a good way of getting rid of all the offcuts, saving them going to the skip or burning them. So literally just ripping down every piece of 4x2, 6x2, 8x2 timber that's too short and can't be used around the rest of the house. Just offcuts from the ends of rafters and joists on reconstructing that roof and also the floor. So cutting those all down, so they're actually, first cut I do on the table saw is a 25mm rip. So obviously you can see these battens are much thicker one way, but on this edge here I've cut them all down to 25mm. You'll see here, if I can sort the tape out, yep, 25mm, and then that 25mm that way I know will be flush with the bottom, but I'll also split these battens that I've cut to 25mm down that thicker edge in half, so then I get 2 out of every single one of those. And then I take those chunkier battens round, empty out my buckets all into the barrow, and just repeat the process. So those 25mm rips, I'm now splitting them in 2, so I get 2 battens every time. So roughly it'll be 21mm by 25mm. And then I'll stick that 25mm edge flush with the bottom of the joists. So I have the table saw set to the depth just about where the teeth are going through that piece of timber. So it just cuts more effectively. But table saws are great for reusing materials. Doing obviously these rips is what they're designed for. So it allows me to get round not having to buy loads of battens and to cut to size and messing around with silly measurements. I can just cut them to the size I need them, and it's really repeatable. It's just a really, really, well, it's a tool to be very cautious with. So you see me
edging on the edge of the table. I don't go any further than that with my hands. The push stick does all the work, and the push stick keeps your fingers safe. There are other table saws, so I know SawStop does one, which has a technology in it which will stop the blade instantly if it detects anything that resembles a finger. I see people testing it with frankfurters or hot dogs online, but yeah, it seems to work really well. An electronic brake hits and a mechanical brake physically stops that blade, so it stops people losing their fingers, because these tools, if not used safely, can be really, really dangerous. So one I'm very, very cautious of, because the blade on this also is, I think it's 8 or 9 inch blade, so it could take off your arm if you're not careful. So take your time, set it up, and then as you can see here, I'm dropping it all into the bucket, so I don't need to pick up these individual bits, which is just going to save me loads of time.
But I'll get all this tidied up and then I'll set you on time lapse, get all the insulation in. I'm going to leave that section and that section exposed, as that's where my radiator pipes come up. They're a bit long at the moment, but I've put insulation on them, so the whole room, and this is the second bedroom, can be insulated. Obviously not having a window in, meaning it's quite windy in here. But it's a 2.7 by, I think, 3 metre room. So it's a small double bedroom, and it's the second bedroom in the property. You see, you're going to have an entrance there, radiator as mentioned over there, probably a TV or sorts up here. And where it's a bungalow, my electrician, he wants to wire from above. Got soft bricks, so he's going to bring his wall chaser. We chase it all out, and that will be in a later video. But I'll set you on time lapse now, and you can see me get all this in.
This is where it's important to spend a little bit extra time setting it out, so you can get all the insulation cut efficiently and to size. So it's all these cuts are exactly the same, every single one of them. So I took one measurement essentially. Obviously I double checked it just in case, but one measurement, and you can see me using the convincer to knock some of them down. And these shorter cuts, a little bit different, but again, they're all one measurement across that window length.
Okay, so this room for the most part is now insulated, and you can see left those boards up. These ones are a little bit lifted here and here. You'll see my little finger sock. They're a little bit lifted just because the pipe insulation goes over the top of those, but I've still got a foam all round these. As you see the gap around there, you got like 2 mil gap, I would say. 1-2 mil gap. Basically you fill that with the expanding foam, and that's then going to give you the tight seal, and then you go over the top of it with the tape, this one. So it's a Rhino tape. I'm using the 100 mil one just so you can be a bit less accurate with it, and then you've got coverage of the joist, so you roll it over the timber bits. And it's a plasticky backed one as well, so it doesn't tear like tin foil. Some of them are very tin foily. But I'm moving on to this room now. I'm going to have an outside tap going just behind what is the external chimney breast outside. So I just need to drill that through. And then I can cut all my insulation, slot my insulation in. I'll leave my pipes exposed, but I also need to insulate the pipes. And as I said, drill this through the wall, get it connected, insulate it, and then just run it down here. But yeah, time lapse again as I do all those little bits, as I need to move all this flooring. It's going to be fidgety, because this is the worst bit about the renovations. Well, not the worst, but top 5. There's no room. It also becomes your storage point, and I've got all the floors up, so it's hard to move stuff around. And there's a big set of stairs out the front, so rolling stuff in and out like that cement mixer, not too easy. Yeah, I'll get on with this.
This room's the main bedroom, so it's a little bit bigger than that other one. It's just over 3 meters each way. Still quite a small room, but it's a normal size double really, and process is roughly the same as mentioned before. So all of these have been planned out in a way where all the cuts are roughly the same. using up all those bits of timber, I can then take the insulation, got 1 cut per row that's just repeated across all those rows, leave those 2 blank sections out just for my radiators. I want the pipes coming through the floor very accurately after it's been plastered, so that's the reason I'm doing it this way, just because I don't quite have the skill. We're doing this job in a place which is a bungalow, so it only has 1 floor, and as mentioned, it's your storage space. You're moving a lot of stuff, and as you can see, some of these boards are a little bit mouldy, so I'm going to have to get some black mould spray, spray them, and then sand them down before they're fixed down permanently. But that's just my board stack. Obviously, where I had no roof on the house for a period of time, they've got a little bit of mould. Should be fine though. Anyway, this is me just going around foaming it all. So I go around the edges. This is in the 2nd bedroom. I've weighted down those sections where it's got the pipe insulation going across. So it just pushes up those insulation boards. It can notch out the joist, but it's a marginal gap. And as soon as you put stuff on it, it just squidges it down. It's absolutely fine.
So you see the expanding foam is all in, and I've sort of like kicked off the excess. There's a few crumbs and whatnot round, but basically creating it airtight shell. Then I'm going to cover it with the tape in a minute and then start to get down my flooring. So flooring I've gone for is 18mm hardwood ply. Not chipboard, hardwood ply. I think it's easier to lift up if something goes wrong, and it feels a lot more solid underfoot. The only problem is where it's not tongue and groove, you need to finish it on a joist or a noggin, otherwise it would flex, which means there's more wastage, and it's also a more expensive product, so that's why people don't tend to use it. But I can use it to tile, I can tile over it, I can just use it as flooring a lot better than I can with chipboard if I need to lift anything. Because once you lift chipboard once, you compromise that tongue and groove structure, then it's working the same as this, but it's a less solid product. I prefer it. But that's not to say I don't ever use chipboard. I use chipboard on one of my garden room builds. If you go back and watch that one, quite an interesting video. But then you could just stagger it, and it where the tongue and groove supports the next board. As such, you don't need to finish it on a joist, so a lot more efficient, and you just chop off the ends, the excess you don't need, as opposed to this I will need to cut to length to fit on the floor joist or finish on a noggin.
That being said, I do see people spacing floor joists out to specifically fit the board so you have less wastage, and these 8 foot by 4 foot boards, they're still produced in the UK in an imperial size, basically 2.4 meters by 1.2, and it's like actually 2.44 by 1.22. So
those boards are down, and it always reminds me of, oh, I should just do chipboard, it's easier, and then you could just cut to the joist because you can sort of see where the screws are. But I just prefer this method. I don't know why. Maybe I should try the chipboard the whole floors, because it's definitely quicker and it's a little bit cheaper. But does the floor feel as solid underneath foot? No. Don't need to glue this either, because all the boards are floating and there's a slight gap in between them. So you can see where I've marked it with the chalk line, and then there's 4 of these SPAC screws. Specific flooring screw. They're brilliant, they are. SPACs, Weerox, I think they are. So you can see the star head in there. And you can also see that smooth shank. So it goes through the board and then it will pull down. But they are quite expensive, but no creaks, no squeaks. Left this board up for the time being, as I still need to pressure test the plumbing. But once it's pressure tested, I can expanding foam these sections in, run my bits of foil tape down the tops of the joist, little section there, and need to sit the board down, and then I can drill the holes, poke it through the insulation, poke it through the floorboard, and then I can fix it down. Still need to cut the small section for here, so it'll probably be 1 board to about here from over there, or rather it will go to about here, and then I'll just transition to a through board here, and then the bathroom's at a separate level. I've already got a board here, so I just need a small section there, but it's 3 boards that I need, which will do that section, this section, and here. Well, maybe 2. But again, pressure testing the plumbing before I fix it all down in a more permanent way. Because the ply, the methodology, or at least my methodology behind it, is I can just take out the screws and lift it up if I need to. But once I've done the expanding foam and everything on the insulation, I don't really want to be lifting it then. But it future-proofs it, because I don't know what my plans are with this bungalow, whether I have it 6 months, 6 years, or 60 years. So future-proofing it as if I'm having it 60 more years. So I can lift the boards if I need to in the future. So the boards last, so it doesn't ever creak. And this is probably costing me, what, an extra £100? And maybe an extra few hours instead of chipboard. I'll take that. But you just feel underfoot, even though the boards are loose fitted, just like large planks of wood as such, they just feel so solid underfoot. And these are with squidgy trainers. If you go back to a previous video where I'm showing how I fitted the floor on my last project, which was quite interesting, go back and watch that. It was Victorian house. The RIC surveyor, so Registered Institute of Chartered Surveyors, come around and he's stomping on the floor and he goes, "Oh, is this a concrete floor?" And I was like, "No, it's not, but it's the kind of finish that you get with this." Maybe it's the 6x2 joists as well for the insulation and the crazy amount of noggins. But if you think about it more efficiently, rather than 400 centres, you could do 400 spacings, and then you're cutting the insulation instead of having like a little strip section that's waste, like those bits over there, from a whole board. You just cut a 2.4 metre board down, 6 ways? But then I still guess you would still have a bit of wastage of the ply. These are the offcut sections I've got. So I've got one long strip from that piece, and then I've got these little bits from the ends of the boards, which I'll probably end up using as shuttering or patching up little sections as and when I need to. But again, with the waste, that's probably, what, half a sheet of ply wasted there. You do get waste with chipboard, it's just a lot less. So probably at like 20% waste there. What, 1, 2, 3, and then a sheet. No, probably like, yeah, 25% waste maybe. 25%, whereas chipboard you're probably around 10% waste, which does add up obviously.
Onto the bigger room, and you can see here the joists are staggered at different widths. Reason being is these were 2 separate rooms joined into one, and one of the rooms is wider than the other. So as I get to that middle point, I've got to do little notches for the insulation to go around, and then expanding foam them. So little notches round the end of the other joists, and 2 pieces of insulation will just butt up against each other. But all these joists are then fixed down into the wall plates as well, so they don't move at all. And once they're wedged full of insulation, they're not moving anywhere. I don't suppose anyone's keeping track of how many of these little battens I'm using, but it's in the hundreds.
So I'll just capture that a little bit better so you can see the 25mm batten. It's basically 2 bits of, well, it would have been 44mm thick, 45mm thick. And I've just split it in half and then made sure there's a 25mm edge. So it splits down the timber in the most efficient way. And then I get 2 strips of batten rather than this being twice as thick and me not being able to fix for it. So get it flush to the bottom, one side, same this side, and then send it home with those 50mm brads. It's solid on that. It's not going anywhere. Absolutely fine. And 4 of them go on. I've been getting not unfair comments, they're fair comments about some of the rubbish underneath here. So obviously this stuff, the timber, that comes out. Take that out. Obviously this sort of stuff, anything combustible, comes out. This is just stuff that's fallen down as I've lifted up these floorboards that were sat on top, all destined for the bin, or stuff that has just slipped down. Obviously got my pipe insulation running through there, some more combustibles. But yeah, this would be sealed off from the world. Old broken buckets, more combustibles, just batten that's fallen through from the roof removal, and all this stuff will end up in the bin. So it's just leaving the raw dirt as such underneath the floors. I'm not going to dig out the rubble and dirt because it's just dirt ultimately underneath this, but I can see the appeal for future me who's going to regret not doing this if he has to crawl through underneath these floors once all the insulation's down. But yeah, here you can see the 18 gauge brad nailer in all its glory. It's quite light, it's gasless, so it's good, and it's got a battery converter to a DeWalt battery because I'm on that platform, saving me buying whole new batteries and chargers, because this gun itself, I think I paid £300 for it about 4 or 5 years ago. It's great for even fixing on skirting boards just while the adhesives and whatnot go off. And I've also constructed some pretty cool furniture out of it. But yeah, doing these battens, so time saving compared to hammering it by hand. But I'll finish getting the rest of these in and then onto insulating the pipes.
So I've used multiple buckets, as you can see, hundreds of these, and they do go on quite quickly. This isn't the only way you can do it. You could do a full fill insulation as such, so you could batten directly underneath the entirety of the joists, and these are 145mm joists, so you could get that some 145mm insulation in this instance. Or if you have like 4x2 joists, old school 4x2 where it is closer to 100mm, you could get that 100mm full fill insulation, but you do need the air gap underneath. So it's important there's an air gap maintained around the building, because you don't want things like, I believe it's called dry rot. I'm not a rot expert, but yeah, you don't want anything like that. So insulating the pipes, important obviously before doing the whole actual sheets of insulation on top. Otherwise you're kind of stuff trying to get to it. You'd have to crawl underneath. Luckily there is quite a crawl space underneath here, but the trickiest part was doing this doorway, just because it's all very tight, and also as well kind of need to get it down in a way where I can then walk on it and get in and out of the property with ease. So fitting all these battens in, these are also under 400 centres, so it's quite tight in there for me to get in between the joists. And I'm not the biggest guy in the world, so yeah, very tight gap, as you can see there. Could only stand sideways on, and if I wanted to turn around, I have to pull myself out, get my hips out from underneath that gap and spin round. But yeah, lots of expanding foam, just being sure, and it also holds the insulation sheets in place to an extent. You just got to let it go off and then chip it off afterwards once it's gone hard. And this is the same expanding foam you would use round fitting windows and doors. So it does have quite a good hold to it, as also those insulation properties. So once I get all the excess foam off with the blower, broom, sometimes the hoover as well, I'm going across that foil tape, because obviously you don't want to be trying to stick it and the surface be all dusty, because it's not going to stick very well. But yeah, then I'm cutting and placing these boards, so bits of pliers. You can see there are bits of mould on them. They're not wet any longer, but it's from when I was replacing the roof. We had a bit of rain, but I'm going to be using mould spray on these ones and sanding them back before I fix those ones down. So they're just going to be loosely laid. No screws, no spack screws in these at the moment. But yeah, the integrity of the board hasn't been lost. Oh, that was me getting a cookie delivery. Anyway, yep. Doing the full tape in that section, leaving the section over to the right exposed just for the time being, because I've got my gas main line being done into the house to my boiler location, so I'm leaving that section open. But I can cut all the boards and place them down, so it's a bit safer for me to walk around. I can store stuff on them, which I will later need to move anyway. And yeah, it makes my life a little bit easier when it comes to doing the insulation in these sections. I'll just be able to lift the boards, put the insulation in, spray with a foam, let it go off, chip it off, foil tape and then lay the boards back down and fix it. But here I'm just doing a bit of core drilling for my services for the other rad, as it's going to be making my life a little bit easier, as I needed to core through a pier wall there. But as I work towards the bow window, I want to make sure that section, as it's going to be a cold spot in the house, is really well insulated. I'm going to be also using insulated plasterboard around that window area as well, just to maximise the, not U values as such, but make it as warm as possible in that cold spot. As you can see, these boards temporarily laid down. Yes, there is a cement mixer in the future front room. All loose, all over the edges of joists, where joists finish, etc. All the way up. So you can sort of see the scale of the room as such, because obviously these are 2.4, 2.4, 2.4. So what, 6, 7.2 plus a board halfway over with no width cut off of it. So 7.8 meters. Oh wait, no, that won't be 7.8 meters, 7.2, 8.4 meters from that wall to this wall. And obviously 2.4 meter board comes to here. So it's just a bit over, it's literally 3 meters wide to this wall. And then it's a bit narrower as you get to this wall. I need to go into the bay window and get these little bits of insulation popped in. And my water obviously been signed off now, so they're actually doing that next few days. So the water and also my gas signed off, so the gas will obviously be run down this room, so all the floor, all the insulation, everything can be going down permanently. Still like odd things like bricks missing, a little bit of pointing needed, but outside lintels are on for the windows, so I can order most of the windows. Just had to pick up 2 more lintels because I need to put one underneath the front door because I'm moving the front door, which I'll reveal at a later date what I'm exactly doing there. I think I might have hinted at it before already. And the bathroom insulation is ready to go down. Got my soil pipe here, obviously not connected, just loose. So this is ready to be connected down here. I just need to chop all this off and then put on my rubber connection and angle as well up to this, and then run it to wherever the toilet is going. But I've just ordered a 1.6 meter bathtub because it's what is it, 1650 is the width of the room. So by the time you put on tile backer board and stuck them on the wall, you're sort of there already. So tile over the top of the bath either side, shower probably this side, and yeah, it'll be a walk-in bathtub. I was going to just do a walk-in shower, but lots of people suggested just doing a bathtub with a L shape in it, so you can stand in them comfortably, so you're not standing in the curvature of the bath as such. So I'm going to do that. But yeah, so just over 1.6 meters wide, but it's like at what we got, a whole board there, if that's pushed right up, just about under 2.4 meters. So we say around about 2.35, I would say, long. And then obviously finishing into the door where I have these bits of insulation and the tops of the joists, as you can see here, notched out. And that's because this flooring in here is going to be 18mm lower than out here, which you can see a little bit more clearly here. I still need to knock up that bit of insulation here as it's fallen, but essentially that will be with it underneath the door lining, and then it will transition to an LVT finish on this floor, and then in here it will be tile. So tile's obviously a lot thicker when you have the adhesive, the underlay and everything, and you don't want a mountain as you come into there. You want it closer to flush, so that's what I'm going for here, with having the bathroom 18mm lower than the rest of the house. So the finished floor height will be pretty much flush. Again, depends on what the build up is, but the tiles are around 12mm plus adhesive. So they're thereabouts, and then if you do underfloor heating, it will be higher again. So yeah, I think it's like 9 to 12 is usually the thickness of tiles. I'll go see, but anyway, it'll be closer to flush, and I just did it at 18mm because that's the thickness of the hardwood ply I'm using. So I can finish it in one sheet up to that point right there, and then sort of I'll cut them at 1.6 meters, and then another sheet will be underneath the bathtub as such. But this evening's job will be cut a little bit of ply for here. Here, I haven't decided how I'm going to transition it in, but probably just a piece of ply to here, and then it will be a new piece in here. So where I'm not doing chipboard, tongue and groove, it needs to finish on a joist essentially. And where I've already placed everything, I'm just cutting the boards to size. So you do have more wastage, as you can see here, but these bits will be used up around the house. I need grounds for the soft fit at certain points. It will definitely be used up. But yeah, I've got more than I need, and I've got 4 more sheets of insulation still. So they will probably, you can see them out there maybe, a little pack. They may find their home in the loft. I may just put them underneath in between the rafters and everything, just to more future-proof the house should it have a loft conversion. So you can see up there, there's currently no insulation. Some insulation will be going here, obviously, once the plasterboard's in. Plasterboard, not that far away from ordering the plasterboard, really. So windows and plasterboard's the next big order, along with the bathroom stuff, and then I can use the toilet actually when I'm here, because previously I used to go to my youngest sister's house, which was 2 minutes away from here, and it was not too bad. But now she's moved to a different house. How selfish of her. But that different house is like 15 minutes away, so a little bit more convenient. So you need to think ahead, plan these toilet runs, and I'm not at the desperation of using a bucket just yet.
When it comes to putting in the larger sheets, so these thicker ones, you can get away with standing on them like they're a surfboard or something, and that just squidges them in. If you need to take any slivers off, I find again, just using that jigsaw just to work down the side, and that takes off any slivers. So that edge towards the wall is just underneath my 400 centers, the 355 millimeters. So some of those ones needed slicing down, as you can see here I'm doing. And then I've got some, once I got all those in, I had some tricky cuts around the front door. So front door, I've moved the lintel down pretty much where the door will sit on, and I've had to extend those joists annoyingly. A little bit too short, and I didn't want to just have the floorboard floating as such. So just to make it secure, and then getting all the insulation in, and again, the same process, expanding foam, tape. Okay, so I've used up what I think is all the insulation I'm going to need. So I've got left over 2 full untouched sheets, and then these 2 smaller sections. Still need to expand in foam and tape, but I'm bringing out the door, the front door as mentioned. You see there, still got a expanding foam, all those gaps and tape. And here everything's down, everything, all the way up into the doorway reveals. That little bit there needs knocking down. You might see that. The light's failing though at the moment, so I still need to expand foam that section, and foil tape this very last bit. So you can see loads of shiny foil tape, which again, that thermal radiation, just keeping that airtight seal. I've already got the expanding foam in there that I've chipped off flush, and then you cover it with the foil tape. So it's more like the rest of the insulation with the foily sides, those foily surfaces. Annoyingly, I'm out of that last little bit of foil tape that I need for here. And there is a little section there, those noggins which don't have foil tape, and just in front of the door. So I need to go grab one last roll of foil tape. Thought I had just about enough, but one last roll, and that will do me there, and also in this little bathroom section. Wow, the little bathroom section I've shown about 20 times, and this section in the hall. Yes, I'm in my mum's car, but I have more rhino tape courtesy of Toolstation. So I'm going to head back and get that last bit done. Foil taped, get the boards down, and then I can get onto the intricate cuts. Whether I'll do all the cuts before I run out of daylight, not too sure. I do have some lights, but I can't bother to set them up, is also half the problem. So I'm working towards the back door, using all the bits of ply that I was using to cover up the back door to stop critters, foxes, cats, humans getting in, and using that foil tape that I just picked up. But you can see very last section here, and there was a tiny bit in the bathroom that I needed to do. But you just want the foil tape down before obviously you get all the ply down, because otherwise you've wasted your money. So yeah, laying all the ply down, it runs pretty much to the end of the room. I've got a little strip to do in that doorway as it will go to the outside skin, but it all lands on a joist. There's a few complex cuts that I needed to do, so I'm using a mixture of the circular saw and the hand saw to finish them. I could use that jigsaw again with a wood blade, but yeah, just to fit round this section here, landing on all the joists, it's still secure. All the boards are floating and obviously not interlinked with tongue and groove, but they will be fixed down with those screws I showed earlier, which are obviously quite expensive and are designed for doing flooring. So really good hold, and again, with one of those complex cuts again, I'm using the jigsaw this time, and this is just to cut in between that doorway section, which is eventually going to be blocked up. It was a little bit tricky to do some of these cuts because you try and do them in one go. And these will be the last of the intricate cuts. I say intricate, they're not that complicated. Few measurements, I draw them down on the piece of ply, and you can see these ones will just go into this section here, and it goes into the door reveal, so it'll be underneath where the door swings. And now to get this section cleared up and in, also need to get a little bit of foil tape there. So blocking up this doorway, trying to get it done in one cut as I'm running out of space. You can see the plasterboard there in the background. I do need to keep this doorway open for the time being, but eventually this will be studded over and it'll sort of be where my sofa goes. It's just much easier to bring in 2.4 metre sheets of plasterboard through this gap.
Okay, so that concludes the flooring. I had that little cut there to do. It still needs fixing down. I'm not going to fix it down just yet, just in case I need to get underneath when the services are connected. But fixing it down, I've marked all the points for where I'm going to put my screws. So my joist look, you see these random blue marks around the edges of the building, and they indicate where my joists are, my fixing points. So I'll ping chalk lines across them and put in those spac screws. You don't actually need to do the hardwood system. I've just done it because I prefer the hardwood system. And when I say hardwood system, I mean the ply, as opposed to the chipboard. It's not actually needed. And when it comes to insulating it, also the foam stage is not necessarily needed. You can get this product called Gapo tape, and Gapo tape is like a spongy tape that you put around the edge of your insulation board, so you actually cut them quite a bit smaller, and then that will squidge in there, provide that airtight seal. It's just a bit expensive for my liking, even on a small project like this. But you'll see here in the background, that's all, that's my bits of finger, that's all the waste ply. So I have quite a few bits there, be used for shuttering and whatnot. These are just the end rips, this is probably the biggest one, the rest are smaller. I mean, that's like 9 inches, so like just over a foot each one. Got a couple of long rips there and a few long strips there. I have one square over there and one little square there. But I still have the roof section to make in here, which is going to be around 600 by 2 meters. I'll probably do that out of OSB anyway, as I've got loads of OSB, got those 3 sheets. But that's what I did for the flooring. Again, you do get more waste, it is a little bit more expensive, but you can chop and change how you fit it, i.e. you're fitting bigger sections, but you're having to finish it on joists, noggins, or put some blocking in. You're doing it on the first floor. I've done this in the past. If you go back and have a look at that video, I put blocking in. So blocking's sort of like noggins, in addition to noggins. So not the full depth of the joist, just a point where you can support the joist on. So say for example I had an 8x2 joist and then I've put in a 4x2. So pipe work and electrics can easily be moved around. But yeah, definitely the most expensive bit about this is the insulation and the foam. I used 4.5 rolls of the tape. I used 21 sheets of ply, 22 sheets of ply, plus obviously the waste. And I think it was
I've used 17.5 sheets of insulation. So I have 2.5 sheets of the insulation left, and they'll go in the loft somewhere. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you want to go back and watch my previous flooring video, slightly different. So yeah, catch you later. Enjoy.